All right, here we go. I'm gonna show you how we maximize our EV driving range. Backing out. So just coming out of this parking lot, I'm still in D, in the EV mode. I'm gonna go ahead and just slide it into S. So I'm in S6 currently. So again, like I mentioned earlier, S6 drives just like regular D mode to me. It may have a little bit more engine brake, but I really don't notice a difference. It's a very natural way of driving. It doesn't feel like a traditional one pedal EV like you would get in like a Tesla on one pedal mode, right? I'm off the gas right now and it's still rolling really smoothly. And then now I'm coming up to this right turn. I have it on S2. And then right as I'm coming out of the turn, I hold it back up and get it back onto S6. So here we go. I'm coming up to a right-hand turn at 30 miles an hour. Instead of touching on the brake, I dropped it into S4, slowly creeping up to the red light here. Now I'm into S2. Now this time I left it in S2. I'm just barely pushing on the gas, right? And then I usually let it creep up. I push it up all the way to S6. Because what I've noticed is if I leave it in S2 or S3, for example, and while I'm just driving down the road, if I let off the gas, it starts braking immediately. And I don't necessarily want that because I'm not a single pedal driver. And I think it's just really hard for me. It's not a natural feel to drive. I know some EV drivers really like that mode, but I don't like how it's either accelerating or braking. I want it to be able to coast. And so I find S6 is perfect for that. Hi everybody, I know it's been a little while since our last RAV4 Prime video. We've been experimenting a lot with the different shift modes. I think I figured out how to maximize my EV driving range. Since I have an SE model, I don't have the paddle shifters on my steering wheel. However, I'm able to shift from drive and S modes by going side to side on the shifter here. I'm going to show you what I've been doing to maximize my mileage. By default, when you go from drive to S mode, it goes to S4. S4 has a little bit more engine brake and a slightly crisper throttle response. I find that it has a little bit more engine brake than does like a normal gasoline car. So it's something to keep in mind. I don't necessarily like the amount of engine brake on S4 when I'm just cruising down the road. So like if you're lightly on the throttle and you let go of the gas, it starts braking and slowing down right away. I like to kind of roll down the street. So for that, I go up on the shifter to S6. And S6 feels pretty natural. It feels like a regular D drive mode to me, almost. The benefit to having S6 is that once you're already in S6, and you want to start to slow down, you can kind of ramp up the engine brake by going down on the shifter. And then S1 is going to be the most engine brake possible. And that only occurs when I think I'm below 50 kilometers per hour. Now, if I try to go down to S1 when I'm going above 50 kilometers per hour, it'll give you a beep beep and it won't let you go down. The goal in driving in S mode is to minimize the actual brake pedal effort. So I try to only touch the brake pedal when I'm in the last 50 feet or so of braking, probably less than 50 feet in most cases. I want to touch it right when I'm at around 12 miles an hour. That's kind of been the sweet spot for me, I've noticed. Maybe I'll turn this screen on so you can see it. So currently I'm not on the gas at all. I've completely let go. It is regen braking a tiny bit, but it still like cruises down the street fine. It's not actively braking, I should say, or it doesn't feel like it's actively braking. I gassed it a little bit. Okay, and I'm coming up to a red light here. It just turned green. So instead of pushing on the mechanical brake pedal, I'm just gonna drop it to S4. So that slows me down a little bit to give me a little bit of cushion in front of the car ahead of me. And so far on this road, I haven't touched the brake pedal at all. I've been just relying on the regen brake. The only downside to this is that when you're regen braking, it doesn't matter which mode you're in, your brake lights don't turn on. So I suppose there's a chance that somebody could rear end you if they didn't realize that you were slowing down. But regen brake isn't super strong in that way. Like, it's not like slamming on the brakes. It's kind of a gentle brake, even if you're down into the S2 and S1 modes. So I'm coming up to a red light now, to this left turn. I'm still at S6, just cruising down, right? So now I go to S4, 3, 2, and I put it into S1 right now. So this is kind of a natural brake. And then the light just turned green. I'm at S6. So again, I never had to touch my mechanical brake. I was able to get through that red light without touching my mechanical brake and just relying on engine regen. So in trying this out, like through many loops and driving probably over 100 miles this way and then the traditional way, just keeping it in drive and using the brake pedal, we've been getting about 10% more EV range on average. So maybe somewhere around 3 to 4 miles on average per tank of EV. I shouldn't call it a tank. Per battery charge, we're getting about 3 to 4 extra miles. So right now I'm at 57 miles an hour in S6 mode. I'm coming up to a hill. No red lights. The one thing is, if you forget which S mode you're in and say you're in like S2 mode, it becomes kind of apparent because when you push the gas, it increases the throttle response. So even though you're pushing a little bit, you'll notice your car surging forward a little bit faster than usual. But it's not a huge amount of thrust either way. When you floor it on any S mode, it all feels the same. It's the same amount of max power. It's not like you get any extra max power. It just changes the way the throttle response is. So, oh, here we go. This light just turned yellow. I just dropped it into S2. But it's not going to be able to engine brake fast enough. So I had to push on the mechanical brake. Now, there is a meter here that shows, you know, whether you're using power, eco, or charging. When you push on the mechanical brake, you'll notice your charge meter goes all the way pegged to the side. So you're using both your mechanical brake and maxing out your regen brake. Obviously, if you're using a mechanical brake, you're not able to capture that energy. So right now I left it in S2. I didn't bother putting it in S6 yet. And it feels normal. It's not like I'm using a whole lot of extra EV power. The only time I would notice that it's actually in S2 is if I let off the gas, then it starts to engine brake immediately, like pretty aggressively. And this is why I leave it in S6 when I'm cruising. I only drop it down into S4, 3, 2, and 1 when I'm actually braking. That's what I've been doing because that's just what I'm comfortable with. And for my wife, she's not gonna bother doing this because she doesn't wanna mess with the gear shifter here. But I learned to drive on a manual car anyways, so this isn't a lot of extra shifting for me either way because I'm used to shifting gears anyways. Here we are, we're coming up to a green light. Okay, this one didn't change. I'm currently in S6, which feels pretty much just like regular drive mode to me. We always have the dial on eco mode, and it's plenty fast. So I'm rolling down this hill in S6. We're on a slight downhill right now. It's accelerating just the slightest bit. Now I'm at 57. I might drop it to S5. And it's still at 57. It hasn't accelerated anymore down the hill. If I change it to S4, my charge meter got pegged a little bit further. Now I'm down to 56, 55. So it is engine braking more, 54. Now I've hit the flat part of the hill. I've moved it back up to S6. I'm still just cruising down the hill, right? So if I go to this trip information, just going down that hill right now, I got 1.5 E's. So I got about maybe 75 watt hours, right? Ooh, I'm coming up to this red light real quick. So I dropped it into S1. And then I had to push my mechanical brake, so it didn't really matter. I'm not sure if this is worth the extra work to get another 10% of range, because first of all, it doesn't really matter too much in this car. It's so fuel efficient, and I don't know if it's worth bothering with it. But I do get an extra 3 miles to 4 miles, and that's been demonstrated over like maybe 500 or 600 miles of driving. I've been really careful to drive exactly the same, and the only difference or the only variable I'm changing is whether or not it's in S or drive mode. Staying normal pace. I'm coming up to another red light in S1. So I applied the brakes right when I was at around 12 miles an hour, so that was ideal. So look at all the E's that I racked up right now. I racked up 3.5 E's right now in this last minute. That's a lot. I think I calculated 2.5 E's is somewhere around like half a mile of gain. Now I have to recheck my math on that. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it was about half mile of gain if I get an extra 2.5 E's. So the thing is, it's easy to say, oh yeah, I got 2.5 E's, you know, I gained an extra on top of the normal drive mode. That's not true, right? So when you're in regular drive mode and you brake, you're still gonna gain some E's because it's still gonna do the regenerative braking. So you're looking to figure out how many additional E's you're getting on top of the usual regenerative braking. So it's a little bit hard to figure out, but I thought, you know, instead of doing a bunch of math and trying to figure it out on my own, I'd rather just drive it and get a big sample size. So again, I've done this for a few hundred miles to get an idea of what I can, you know, eke out on the EV range. So to measure that, what I've been doing is I would hold on this OK button, and then it would reset the average miles per kilowatt hour. So if I'm in regular drive mode, I typically get right around 3 miles per kilowatt hour. If I use this, you know, different S mode braking techniques, I get somewhere around 3.3 to 3.5. So conservatively, I'm saying I'm getting an extra 10% of range. Based on my trip meter, I'm getting a good 3 to 4 miles each time. Making a right turn here. So I'll show you again how I've been EV braking. So I'm coming up to the stop sign. I'm just off the gas in S6. And as I'm getting closer to it, I'm at S5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then I touch the brake pedal right at the end there. One thing to note is this method only works when you're driving an EV. Duh, right? But even if you have just 1 mile of EV range left, sometimes you put it in S6 and it turns on the gas motor. And then if you crank it up to S3, for example, you'll hear the gas motor revving up. So that's no good because you're not regenerative braking at that point. You're just burning through a lot of gas and it's revving really high. So just keep that in mind. And obviously if you're in hybrid mode, then the gas motor's on. So using the S functions doesn't change the way it behaves. As far as the regenerative braking is concerned, it's only gonna burn through a lot of fuel. So again, you only wanna do this in EV mode. I've noticed when I have about 2 miles of range, it still works just fine. But when I have 1 mile of EV range left, when I jack it into S mode and start, you know, pulling it into S2, S3, it'll kick on the gas motor sometimes. And then that defeats the purpose of this method, right? So I'm mostly going downhill for that part of the drive. And it says my total average is 7.3 miles per kilowatt hour. And obviously I would never get that. But 3.3 to 3.5 has been reliable for me. On some drives, if I drive really easy, I can get over 4, but I wouldn't call that typical. When I drive just normally, I get 3.3 to 3.5. So anyways, I hope that was helpful for you. If you want to maximize your EV range, you can be a nerd like me and use the S driving modes. And S6 feels most like drive, and S1 is the most aggressive regen and most aggressive throttle mapping. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you soon. Bye.